As might be expected in a world in which we cannot ever predict what's going to happen next, we're still finding our way along step by step, one at a time. So thanks again for joining us. We will proceed with the meeting, and the first thing I'm going to do is to introduce Abby Gitlitz, our Vice President, who will be able to give us some further details about how the meeting is going to be run. So Abby, take it away.
Okay, so first I want to thank everybody for their patience and everybody who called in to say that you couldn't get in and everybody who texted. I hope everybody is in at this point. If not, my fellow board members are going to be letting people in as they arrive. We have a couple people whose names are confusing, things like their name is just iPhone, so we're trying to figure them out. I hope everyone can hear me. If you cannot hear me, you are going to chat to one of the people who are our Zoom tech consultants, our Zoom helpline, and let them know. And I'm going to let you know how to do that in just a second. And I realize you can't hear me, so you didn't hear me say that. I know. Okay. So we have a help desk during this meeting. So if you end up having issues, you should go to the chat function, which if you're on an iPad is in the upper right-hand corner where there are the little dots. You click on the 3 dots, it'll say chat. Probably the same on an iPhone. If you're on a regular computer, look for an area where it says more, and you should have the option to chat. There are a couple different ways you can chat, and one is to everybody. Please do not do that. What that means is whatever you're saying, like, I can't connect, or where do I find this button, is going to go to everybody in the congregation. Instead, some of us have renamed ourselves, and we have renamed ourselves terribly clever things like Zoom technical support, and I have a question. So if you have a question, please just chat with that person, and you can have a one-on-one, and they'll help you figure out how to do what it is that you need to do. Okay, so we're doing the meeting this way because of COVID-19, and best practices say that we should stay apart from each other a little bit even while we are being together. Our bylaws do allow for us to do a meeting in this format, so we're fine there. We are going to be recording this meeting, so just be aware that should you be someone presenting or if you are asking a question, this meeting will be recorded and it will be made available to the membership and to our friends who might not be able to join us at this time. This meeting is going to take longer, as you have already figured out, because this is the first time we've done this. So we're still learning how to make it work, working out the bugs in real time. And so we just ask for everybody's patience as we do this. We will get it working, and we will get every part of it working, but we might have to do things a couple of times. Okay, for participation, when we do meetings in person, usually when there is an appropriate time for comments, we have the at-large members have microphones, and they go around and they allow people to make comments. With this, we are not going to unmute people because that will simply become untenable. So what I'm going to ask is, if at any point you have a question or a comment that is pursuant to the things being discussed, not a tech support question, but something about what the meeting is currently talking about, then please send it to the chat person, and the chat name is Ask a Question or Make a Comment, and just send it to us and we will read it aloud at an appropriate time. Okay, so what I'd like everybody to do right now is figure out where chat is on your screen. So find the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner, find something that says more, but I want everybody right now to find chat. And now I want you to all look down at the bottom, and it gives you some options as to who to chat. And one of them is all participants, but we're not going to do that. I want you to scroll down until you get to Ask a Question. That's somebody's name right now. And I want you to chat yes to that person, okay? And this is to test that, oh my God, and they're all showing up on my screen, and you people are awesome. I am seeing a whole stream of yeses show up on my screen, and that lets me know that you have figured out how to do the chat function. So later on, if you guys have a question or comment, this is where you're going to send it. All right, so we figured out how that works. Okay, hold on 1 second. Can someone close my door? We're getting an echo on my side, so we're going to close my door really quickly here. All right, hold on a second. I apologize. We have a lot of the board in one building in different rooms so that we can all support each other. Okay, so Stuart, mute yourself, Stuart.
Yes.
Mute yourself. Thank you. Okay, so we figured out how to mute ourselves. Awesome. Everyone should be in mute. Okay, voting is going to be different than we normally do. Normally, when we have a meeting, we have two different types of votes. One type of vote is just a show of hands, and we usually do those for things like, you guys all say it's okay for us to approve the minutes at the next board meeting, and you approve the slate. And we just do a yes or no. The other vote that we do is the vote that's for the 25% plate vote. And we talked about that during the service today, and the organizations were out there. That vote is a little different because that we count absolutely every vote to make sure everybody's voice is heard and that we do the will of the congregation. Right? So we're going to do voting here, and we're going to do it two different ways. And I'm going to explain how it works, and then we're all going to do a practice vote so that we make sure everybody's voting technology works, okay? So when we do a vote, it's going to be a little different. So what you're going to see on your screen is in a minute, not yet, but in a minute, there's going to be a thing that pops up that says, take a poll. If you are on an iPhone or iPad, just tap on it. If you're on the computer, click on it, and a poll will open up. The poll will have one question, and for our test, it is reminding us we approve that we should just breathe when there are technical difficulties. Then you're going to have 3 opportunities to vote, which is a little different. The first one is, I approve that we should all breathe. The second one is, I disapprove, or I vote against that we should all breathe. All right? The next question says, there is only one person at this device. And if you are the only person at a device, click that. But there are a lot of us who have many people at one device, and we want to make sure each of them gets a chance to vote as well. So the next question says, there is only one person at this device. Person number 2 votes for, person number 2 votes against. And then the third question is, there are fewer than 3 people at this device, or the third person votes for, or the third person votes against. Even if you are only one person and there's only one person at your device, you need to answer all 3 of those questions. So if you're only one person, you would vote yes or no for the first one. The second question, you would vote, I'm only one person. And the third question, you would vote, there are no more than 2 people at this device. This is the workaround. We figured out how to have multiple people at devices and having everybody have a chance to vote. So we're going to try that out now. If you have more than one person at a household, each of you should get the chance to vote on that screen. So you should see now that a practice poll has just come up. All right? So if you will go ahead and take that, and you'll see there's question 1, then hit next, question 2, then hit next, question 3, and hit submit. If you would like to abstain, that's fine. Just close the poll. All right, so we're going to take a minute here and let everybody practice doing that. Now, what you can't see, and I can't see either, is that right now, Drew Schroeder, who is a member of our board of directors, is seeing the results. And he can also see who has submitted the poll and who has not. So let's see. So I'm going to now take a moment here and check out some of the things that people are saying in terms of asking questions. So just hang out. Okay. Okay, we've got one person saying it will not let me get to question 3, and the submit button will not let me submit. So make sure you've tapped on something on question 2. So you have to tap on something for every single question. So if you look at question 2 and you're still on that question, tap on there is only one person on that device. There are a couple people who are saying they can't see the poll, and that is an issue we have been having. If you got to the meeting, not via the link we sent, but through the number that you type in, that might be why, and we're going to work on getting that fixed. Okay, so I'm hoping everybody has been able to get into the poll and done the poll at this point. And I'm going to get a quick response from Drew here. How are we doing in terms of, are there a lot of polls still open?
Thanks, Abby. I went ahead and closed the poll. We had just about 90% of the folks in the meeting submit the poll, and it was overwhelmingly positive. So thank you for your willingness to breathe as we work through our technical difficulties.
All right, you guys are awesome. So somebody asked, can I send my vote via chat? We're not going to do it via chat, but if you wish to text me your vote, okay? Let's see, you should all know, if you can text your vote to Anne LeDuc, and that phone number was on the email, but I'll give it to you now. So if you have a pen, if for any reason you were not able to take the poll, text what you wanted it to be, you ready, to 812-720-3688. Okay, so just making sure everybody's got that. Okay, so we've all done a practice poll, which is great. We know that works. When we do the 25% poll vote, it will not be in this format. Because this format is not great for offering multiples and to make sure that we have it exactly right, we're actually going to give you a link. And we will also email this link to everybody who signed into the meeting. So if you have signed into the meeting and we have your email, we will also email you that link at the end of the meeting. Either way, you're going to go somewhere outside of the Zoom meeting to vote on that question of the 25%. Okay, so we're actually going to establish a covenant now between all of the participants in this meeting. And this will act as a code of conduct for all of us and will enable the meeting to progress more smoothly. So because there are so many of us, we agree that we will not unmute ourselves for any reason unless we are the designated presenter. We agree to manage all questions and discussion through chat so that the meeting does not become unwieldy. We agree to address our chats to the specific appropriate party and never chat to everyone in the meeting. This is one we haven't talked about yet, but we are going to agree to turn off our video settings so that we can see the presentation and the presenters, but we do not serve as a distraction for everyone else. So right now, I at least am seeing Drew frantically trying to figure out something on his screen, and he's looking at poll results if I had to guess, right? And now he's just turned it off so that we just get this other icon. So if you guys touch on your screens right now, there should be an icon that says stop video. And I'm going to ask each of you to touch that now so that we are not seeing everybody in the meeting, but we're just seeing the presenters. If you're on a computer, I think it's under the more, but again, what you're going to do is just the thing that says stop video. Okay? All right. So I'm going to go back to our covenant now. We agree to ask the appropriate parties for help if there's something we do not understand or if we have a technical difficulty. Please don't just sit there wondering what to do. Reach out to us and we will help figure it out. And we agree to participate in the polls either by voting or by conscientiously abstaining. So I'm hoping that everyone is willing to abide by these. Another thing, we are going to affirm all the virtual votes at our next in-person meeting. So if we are able to have an in-person meeting in December, we will simply make a motion to affirm all the votes that happened at this meeting. There won't be discussion at that time, merely an in-person vote. And I believe that is it for me. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Stuart, and he is going to go over the agenda, and we are going to call the first vote, which is a vote that says you all say it's okay for us to vote in this format. Thank you all, and I look forward to a good meeting.
Thanks very much, Abby. I really appreciate that. And again, thanks to everybody for hanging in there as we work through these various technical difficulties. Your participation is very important in this meeting, and we really hope you will be able to move through it with us. So what you're seeing on your screen now should be the order for the meeting. And we are now at item number 3, which is an parliamentarian. And I'm here to introduce Guy Loftman as our parliamentarian. Thank you very much, Guy, for serving in this important role. As Guy tells me, he hopes that he never gets called on. The second thing I need to do is to call for our first motion. And this is a motion to proceed under these emergency rules that Abby has just laid out. So I'm going to ask everybody now to affirm that well, first off, I've got to call for a second to call for this motion. So do I have a motion that we proceed under emergency rules?
I motion and second. Oh, Cynthia Bretham, second.
There you go. So now all of you are we going to have a little pop-up? Yes, there's your pop-up that says motion to proceed with virtual congregational meeting. And you can now vote. I'm doing. Submit that vote. We will, it takes time to tabulate votes, and so I will get a notice from one of our board members who's acting as our one of our assistants to this meeting to tell me that in fact the vote has carried or failed, I suppose, if all of you don't want to do this, but that's, we'll move forward. So the next thing on our agenda, item number 4, is a chalice lighting and opening words by our ministerial team. And somewhere out there in the Zoom world is Reverend Macklin and possibly also Reverend Lake. And so I am going to mute myself and ask them to unmute themselves.
Stuart. Hello. So here we are. We light our chalices, lamps of our heritage, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, and the spark of the sacred, which calls on each of us to care for our earth. Our opening words from Reverend Lake.
These opening words are by Reverend Walter Royal Jones, Jr. Mindful of truth ever exceeding our knowledge, and community ever exceeding our practice, reverently we covenant together, beginning with ourselves as we are, to share the strength of integrity and the heritage of the Spirit in the unending quest for wisdom and for love. Thank you.
So now it's my pleasure to introduce our senior minister, Reverend Marianne Macklin, for her report.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Do you see how tall I look at that pulpit? It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah, I've grown about a foot. Anyway, in this church year, July 2019 through June 2020, I believe we are experiencing the greatest amount of challenge and change for our congregation, at least in my years of ministry and serving here, which have been 18 years. In February, a negotiated resignation was reached with our associate minister, Reverend Scott McNeil. Needless to say, this transition was and is a stressful process for many members of our staff, lay leadership, and congregation. As a result, consultants suggested we not start any new congregational projects or make any changes for the whole next year, 2020, 2021, in order to heal and resettle into a sense of normalcy. Enter COVID-19. So here we're gathered for a virtual congregational meeting, and in our country and throughout the world, people are in the streets demanding the end to violence and systemic racism towards Black people, against police brutality and police killings of Black people, racial profiling, racial inequality, and the conditions in the U.S. criminal justice system. In Bloomington, we have been given direction by Black Lives Matter Bloomington, as well as leaders at the Enough is Enough protest march on Friday, including asking Bloomington Police, demanding Bloomington Police Department sell the Bearcat and invest that money into serving our community. In our congregation, our anti-racism work continues through a variety of avenues, including our Racial Justice Task Force, our Hope for Prisoners Task Force, many of our task forces, our Religious Education's Dismantling White Supremacy Group, also events and worship services utilizing relational cultural theory as a basis in our anti-racism work. Our vision is clear: seeking the Spirit, building community, changing the world. And I say, with all of this, steady as she goes. But how does one go about making decisions with all of these changes that are happening? Recently, a staff person at Indiana University called making decisions during this time a Ferris wheel of magical thinking. And you can picture a Ferris wheel and just all the little parts going by, the unknowns we have about COVID testing, the unknowns we have about reporting, the unknowns about the economy, the unknowns about, well, we know about the White House incompetence, but how far is that gonna go? Just keep spinning around. The unknowns about human behavior right now, the arrival of Indiana University students and what that may mean, the unknown about a second wave of COVID, let alone this one, and what will happen in the autumn and winter of this virus. So that is the Ferris wheel of magical thinking, and we're trying to do our best with that. Since early April, I've been in contact with other Unitarian Universalist ministers, as well as Mid-America regional staff and UUA staff, to learn more about and share with others about the impact of COVID-19 and what are the best practices for congregational life. Some of you who have received mailings from the Unitarian Universalist Association received a special message from the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Reverend Dr. Susan Frederick Gray, on May 14th. Here's what I like. There's a lot of things I like about President Susan Frederick Gray. One is that her first job she ever had was as an umpire for Little League, which means she really knows how to stay focused, and no matter what other people are saying needs to happen, she's able to call what needs to be called. The other thing is she has a background in molecular biology, which I think gives us a heads up and a head start already with the science behind COVID. This is what she said in one part of her statement, and I have this full piece in my report that goes to the congregation that was mailed out the other day. She said this, quote, "Over the past several weeks, the UUA has consulted with multiple public health officials in order to update the guidance we provided on March 12th, recommending congregations stop gathering in person. Based on advice from experts, we continue to recommend that congregations not gather in person. We also recommend that congregations begin planning for virtual operations for the next year through May 2021. Then she puts, take a moment to breathe. I know this is significant. Again, you can see her full report at the end of my report in the annual report that comes out for everyone that has come out. Personally and professionally, I agree with President Susan Frederick Gray's recommendation. Of course, the UUA serves the congregation. It does not dictate what we can and cannot do. I applaud the courageous stance of this recommendation, and to be honest, I felt relief when I saw such a clear recommendation named. Our board of directors also agree with the spirit of this recommendation, and they plan, now this is the part you need to hear, plan for virtual operations to continue through May of 2021. However, the board will continue to meet monthly with ministers to assess and reassess the timing, the models, and mode of opening. So we're going to be looking at all this, but because we need to plan, we're just going to say, okay, looks like we're going to be virtual to May 2021. If something happens that changes that, then we'll change it and start, instead of trying to catch up all the time with what we're doing. Details of plans for moving forward this year will be explored with the staff, lay leaders, and through congregational input, which the board will seek from you all. However, there's a few things I'd like to add to this, and that's about our congregation. Remembering that a large part of our church population or their households are in high-risk groups. So is returning before anything like a vaccine even practical? Considering that a large part of our leadership and their households, including ministers, including me, and the staff and board and key volunteers are in high-risk groups. Sometimes we were looking at some congregations of doing a two-tiered opening, but then does that just put more burden on volunteers and the way we do things? And does any return plan put pressure on ministers, staff, and volunteers in key positions to return before it would be advisable if we try something to push something forward? And would people feel pressured to maybe hide medical concerns or ignore them because they really want to get back and be with people? So we want to look at all of that, and those are concerns for this congregation. This is the most important part. I'm going to reiterate. Our board is opting to see the UUA recommendations as a guideline. However, it will reassess the situation monthly at the regularly scheduled board meetings. I will say that some Unitarian Universalist churches have already declared they will not return to full operations in their building until a viable and time-tested vaccine is available. Given the health concerns, ethical concerns, and the great number of unknowns in this situation, this is a viable option for UUCB. But again, that will be considered along with many things at the monthly board meeting. Needless to say, we have some decisions ahead as a congregation. Meanwhile, we seem to be keeping on track with a lot of things because of a lot of reasons. With our budget, that will be a temporary guide as we enter the summer and autumn season. We are looking at the budget, expenses, and income weekly, a small group of us. And I also suggested to the board, and they agreed, that a newly revised budget based on the income and expenses experienced in the next couple of months be presented in the December congregational meeting to be approved by the congregation. So we're going to approve a budget today, but know that if things change, again, all of those unknowns on that Ferris wheel of magical thinking, if the economy had changed, whatever changes, we will have a chance then as a congregation to say, here's some tweaks we made, let's look at this at the December meeting. It might even be the same thing. It might say, hey, some of the changes didn't happen, here it is again, let's take a look at it. Through staff and lay leaders, the outreach to congregational members and friends from the onset of COVID-19 has been exemplary and caring. The support of the congregation continues to be encouraging. At this time, since conditions do not favor a hiring of an interim minister with all of the unknowns, we are reconfiguring our ministry for 2020-2021. We have already secured help, ongoing help from Reverend Barbara Carlson in pastoral care, Reverend Bill Breeden in social justice and preaching, and Reverend Barbara Child with chalice circles and adult education classes. For those of you who attended worship today, you met Reverend Kristen Green, who will be joining us a number of times in our pulpit this summer. We also looking at ways that the board will talk about of expanding Reverend Emily Manville Lake's ministerial responsibilities. Our message and presence, albeit virtually, will be important as we go forward during these times, which we know are uncertain. We know that. That's why I didn't say these uncertain times, because if I hear that one more time, I might fall out of my chair. So, no, I didn't fall out of my chair. Lastly, Ned's laughing in the background, that's good. So lastly, my gratitude to so many people who continue to serve, support, and enrich the ministry of this congregation. Our board of directors, our staff, and I can see all of them as I talk about them, our lay leaders, our volunteers, our musicians, our everybody. Our everybody. Those who see each other chatting on Facebook and FaceTime and live Facebook streaming, all the different ways from emails to telephone calls. We know that connection is vital to the human spirit, and we will continue to do so as a congregational body. You are doing that. We know that community and a sense of belonging brings our hearts, souls, and minds together. So we will continue to establish known ways now and new ways of connecting. We know that a full spirit and sense of belonging results in profound caring for the world around us. So we will continue to reach out, seeking the spirit, building community, and changing the world. For this reason, this year's Special Services Award, it's plural, awards, goes to everyone. Seriously, everyone. The members and friends of this congregation, everyone who cares about and serves this congregation. There will be a Special Services Award attachment in our next prologue. All you need to do is print it out, properly sign it. If you don't have a printer, let us know. We'll print one up and send your way, put your name on it, hopefully displayed in a place of prominence. And hey, take a creative photo of you with your certificate and send it in for our slideshow at the end of the worship service for summer solstice. You all deserve this. The Special Services Award to the congregation goes to everyone. Few last things. One is I asked the board and they approved this, and that is next week, the offices will be closed so the staff can have some time off. We really didn't get much time off. Well, we didn't get any because of the great change with COVID-19. If you know people who are working through this, and you end up working more because of all the adjustments. I'm hoping that will eventually settle down. I don't know if it will or not. But next week, the staff will have off. There will be some other people working. You have the list of ministers to call if you have pastoral concerns. And also, Sharon Yarbrough will be available the first part of the week, as well as Melinda Swenson, both people who work with our caring committee and others. We will be there for you and whatever way we need to. So that is the end of my congregational report. I say thank you to all of you. I say congratulations to all the recipients of the Special Services Award to the congregation. We love you. We can't do this without you. And a little shout out to my friend in the back, Ned Joyner, for helping us get through all of these changes, and for all of you who've been patient and willing to be with us and connecting with one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Macklin, for that wonderful report. I now have an opportunity to announce that we have 164 people who are attending this congregational meeting virtually, and we have passed the motion that will permit us to hold this meeting in a virtual manner as we are doing. So thank you all for your votes on that first motion. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our first committee report. I do want to mention that all of the committees and task forces have an opportunity to present reports, and those are written and part of the record for the congregational meeting. You can check those out online, but we've selected a few and invited them to give an oral report. And the first one up is Libby DeVoe, who's going to tell us about how the Planned Giving Committee is doing. Libby, if you are there, unmute yourself and take it away.
Did I do it? Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay, well, I have good news. I want to tell you about 4 significant things that were made possible by the planned gifts of those who went before us. First, planned gift money permitted 1 African-American adult and 1 youth from our congregation to attend a Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism symposium. There, they and other people of color had experiences that we simply cannot create here in Bloomington, and they connected with the larger Black Lives of UU movement. Second, legacy funds permitted Sue Swaney to commission a choral tango set to Walt Whitman's Weave In My Hardy Life in memory of the late Dan Quilter, a former president of our congregation and a dedicated supporter of Interweave, our early LGBT support group. Third, planned giving bequests provided over $2,700 to Habitat for Humanity to buy 2,000 disposable masks for volunteer builders and restore staff, and 6 gallons of hand sanitizer, 6 gallons, to keep them all safe. Fourth, under an innovative new special purposes policy that can award matching funds to social justice task forces, the combined homelessness and Help Feed Our Hungry Neighbors task forces received $1,700 to support community groups who are providing food and shelter during the COVID-19 pandemic. We're grateful to those of you who've already included the church in your estate plans. Now more than ever, we remind all of you of the importance of having an up-to-date will. And from deep in our hearts, we give a resounding thank you for the good works that all of your planned gifts will someday make possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily, for the work you and your committee are doing. Great stuff. Really appreciate that. I also have the opportunity now to announce that we have reached our quorum limit for an official congregational meeting of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Bloomington, Indiana. I know you were worried about that, but we've accomplished that. We're all here, or at least enough of it. The next thing on our agenda is that we have a motion every year about this, and it has to do with the fact that the minutes of this meeting need to be approved. And Stephen Gilbert, our secretary, is in the process of taking those minutes right this very moment. And I would call for a motion for the board of directors to approve the congregational meeting minutes at a future board meeting. So I'm going to call for that motion. And if you will all answer that.
So moved.
And seconded?
And seconded from Michelle.
So here is the vote, the poll that just came up. So please give your consent. And hit submit. We will, while that tally is being taken. We will now move on to the next report. This is from Deb Hutton and the Leadership Cultivation Committee. Oh, I think I just actually changed that on you. Ned. Let's go back if you're still able to do that. So the next item on the agenda is not the Leadership Cultivation Committee, but it is a motion, a second motion, this one to approve changes in the UUCB bylaws. Again, the information on this was put into the prologue or Friday update. I want to very quickly summarize two issues that the board felt we needed to change with regard to our bylaws this year. The first is that when a director or officer needs to resign or to step aside from their elected position, the board then appoints someone to complete that term until the next June meeting. At that time, then a new member can be voted in. We have a situation just like that. As a matter of fact, this spring, Sharon Wiseman informed us that she needed to step aside, and we reached out to Drew Schrader, who has accepted our appointment. When the motions for the electing the new slate of officers, Drew has also accepted our offer to him to stay on as full member full member of the board as one of our at-large members. The motion that we changed in the bylaws this year has to do with the fact that the time that Drew spent this spring as he was in his role as an appointed member will count toward the total number of years or time that he may stay on as an elected board member or as an elected officer of the church. So we do from time to time have people who need to step aside, and when people come in and are appointed, that appointed time should not count on their total time that they might be able to serve office. So that's the first point. The second one is the fact that in the bylaws, we have 4 officers of president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary of the board. Sorry, Steve, just blanked on that for a second. And we've tried in the way the bylaws are written so that the president and the vice president are elected on alternating years. And that's also true for the secretary and for the treasurer, that they're elected on alternating years. So that at any one time, we would not have a total turnover of those officers. Sometimes that just doesn't work out. And so what is going to happen this year, much like Drew's situation, I was appointed or elected actually by the board to serve this past president. And Abby Gitlitz, who was elected to the board as an at-large member, was also moved or by the board into the position as vice president. So the two of us have been asked to stay on as president and vice president. And so this year, we won't be alternating those terms. But whenever it is possible, as the voting for officers and directors occur, we hope to have those on alternating years. But when that doesn't happen, then we have to have something in our bylaws that simply indicates that that rule is whenever we can make that happen. So those are the two issues. You'll now get an opportunity to vote on those. There'll be a pop-up screen that'll show whether you accept the motion. First, we have to, right before that shows up, be reminded, I need this motion to be approved. So the way to do that is that I would like to call for the motion to approve the changes for the UUC bylaws regarding terms of office for directors and officers. Do I hear a motion to approve that change?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. So now a pop-up message will show on your screen to allow you to vote on this motion. So thank you all for doing that. As the results from that motion come in, I will report that back to each of you in the meeting. Now it is time for Deb Hutton to give her report for the Leadership Cultivation Committee. So Deb, if you'll please unmute yourself.
I've done so. Hello, this is Deb Hutton, reporting from Matlock Heights neighborhood. And Ned, just to remind you, I have 8 slides. So as I go through different slides, I'll say, please change. So I'm the chair this year of the Leadership Cultivation Committee. Ned, could you go to the next slide, please? Here's what the Leadership Cultivation Committee, or the LCC, does. We nominate members, research and nominate members for the 14 elected positions in our church, some to the board, 4 to the LCC, and 3 to the Special Purposes Fund, or SPF. We also recommend members when we're requested for other committees. So we don't have to, they don't have to ask us, but if they'd like us to, they tell us what their criteria are for some new people. And we go research and make recommendations to them, usually more. If they ask for 2, we provide 4, and it's really up to them to find who they want for their committees. And the third thing, which is the difference from just being a nominating committee, we cultivate leadership, the concept of it in general throughout the year, not just because we want 14 people in elected positions, but because there's lots of leadership positions in our church, small and large, annual, 3-year-long terms, just a project that would last 5 months, 3 months, 4 years, whatever. So we have seminars, we have leadership conversations to find out what your skills are, or to answer your questions about leadership in our church throughout the year. So that's our main 3 jobs that we do on behalf of you, the congregation. Ned, could you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. So this year we have 5 voting members, myself as chair, and I'll be going off. I'm finishing my 1 3-year term. There are no consecutive terms on this committee. Ann Haynes was on the committee for a 2-year term, but retired in the early winter, and Pat Brantlinger was appointed to take her place. Arzetta Hulse-Lazensky is finishing a 2-year term. Dan Wiseman has just finished 2 years of his 3-year term and will chair the committee next year. Stuart York represented the board as a voting member on our committee, and Anne Leduc did a yeoman's work, as she's doing for the church in COVID-19 conditions, to support us and find us information and record our data. So that's who we are this year. Next slide, please, Dan, Ned. So I'm going to have 5 slides here of the slate of officers for whom you are going to vote in the next motion. And we have 14 elected positions for this church, to lead this church. And in an extraordinary time, we have 11 people being elected to those 14 positions in this 1 year. That's absolutely unusual, must be a record. We normally have, say, 4 to 6, but we have 11. So I'm going to go through them, and these are the people for whom you'll be voting in a motion that I call when I'm done this. So first of all, for the board of directors, Stuart has been appointed, but now he's being voted on for his own first 2-year term. Board members can serve for 6 years on the board, 4 years as an officer. And that's why you see 2-year term and you see first term. So you'll see later someone's onto a second term. Vice President Abby Gitlitz has been appointed this last year. Now she will be voted on for her own first 2-year term as Vice President. Thank you, Abby. Ned, the next slide, please. And the third officer, Steve Gilbert, has been Secretary. He's going to be voted on for his second term of 2 years. Next page, please. Next slide. On the board, we have 3 at-large members. Each has a 2-year term. Julie Lawson will be being voted on as her 2nd-year term. Jane McLeod in her first term, having served as appointed. And Drew, also appointed and being voted on for his first 2-year term. Thank you to all of those board members for their service already. Next slide, please, Ned. So Leadership Cultivation Committee, we try to jog the different terms too, although different people coming on. But again, this year we have 3 brand new members starting for their only 3-year term: Pat Brandlinger, Beth Hollingsworth, and Nicole Motz. Thank you to those 3 for wanting to do a 3-year service on this really important committee. Next slide, please, Ned. Special Purposes Fund Committee. There are 3 members. They can serve 2 consecutive 3-year terms. And Andrew Apple and Ruth Eit will be voted on for their first 3-year term each. Is there a next slide, Ned, or not? Okay, so it is my privilege to call for a motion to approve this LCC slate of 11 elected officials for the U Church of Bloomington.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded by Karen Jewell.
Thank you.
So now you will see a screen pop up indicating an opportunity to vote this motion.
You're for.
Please do that, do so, and submit your response. And again, while the votes are being tallied, I want to thank Deb Hutton and all of the committee members at the LCC. They do really great work on behalf of our church. It's next my honor to ask Andrew Apple to give a report of the Special Purposes Fund Committee. So Andrew, if you will unmute yourself, you may.
All right, I have. Am I coming through all right?
Yes, you are, just fine.
All right, very good. All right, hello everyone. I'm back. I have been a member of the church for about 19 years, but we took a hiatus when our twins were in high school and early college, and spent a lot of time driving around Indiana going to soccer fields. So it's been good to be back and singing in the choir. And last September, Stuart approached me about taking over Special Purposes from Chris Haynes. I had been chair of Special Purposes before, so I was comfortable doing that. So I had been acting as chair of Special Purposes since September. And then, of course, the vote was for the first term that you all actually could vote on. Next slide, please. So our committee is small but mighty. It consists of myself, Harlan Lewis, Kathy Sedelli will be transitioning off, and Ruth will be coming on if the vote goes as expected. And then Rich is a member as board treasurer, and Julie is our board at large member on the committee. So there's just the 5 of us. Next, please. I miss all of them, but I especially miss Lloyd as I'm getting back into the church finances. But we have received memorial donations in this fiscal year in memory of Velma Harrison, Lloyd Orr, and Tommy Owens. And then estate bequests also from Tommy Owens, and then from Marion Sinclair. And so the estate bequests are really what Libby was talking about in terms of planned giving, where these were bequests left to the church in people's formal estate planning. The memorial donations are more like, almost like in lieu of flower gifts, where people want to remember and honor folks, but it's not something that is planned in advance or anything. Libby mentioned a lot of the things that we have used the special purposes funds for in the last year. And for those of you not real familiar with special purposes, these are funds outside of the operating fund. So this is not money that comes in through pledges and such. These are more gifts that are left to the church to help further the mission of the church, but outside of the operating budget. So this is accrued over a very long time, and has there's a corpus of funds now that are held in investments, and that's a lot of what we do is manage those investments, but we also then disperse those funds for things that aren't covered by the operating budget. So attendance at symposia and the musical compositions And those types of things are an important part of what SPF tries to support through the committee actions. The matching funds are new this year. There is a set of guidelines. All the committees and task forces will be able to apply for matching funds. There are limits on a year where we can't just open up all of the resources of SPF to provide matching funds. In the past, we haven't really provided cash donation contributions. It's been more physical items and things like attending the symposia. But we will be taking applications. It'll start within the beginning of the next fiscal year on July 1st, where the committees and task forces can apply for matching funds. We have the guidelines that'll be available. I'm not sure exactly. We can post them on the SPF Google Docs, but we'll try and get an easier way to get those for people who haven't seen them yet. And then so far, the response for the COVID-19 activities, we had a request from Habitat for Humanity to purchase PPE so that they could get the crews back on site and building homes for folks, and to get the restore employees safe while they're reopening the restore. So that's been done in the last fiscal year. Next, please. These are the assets under management in the investment accounts. I'm not going to go through the exact numbers. I will say that they are up slightly from the end of March last year. Even though we had a downturn in the equities market, it was offset by earnings and contributions and some strength in the bond funds that we have. Anybody who's quick with math will note that the operational numbers on this slide don't match up to what I had in the annual report, and I'll admit to a mistake in pulling numbers off a spreadsheet. I was one row off, and so I have to amend the annual budget or the annual report that I submitted. But these are the numbers that we have under management right now. Our primary exposure to equities is in the Vanguard Wellington Fund. The symbol is VWENX, if anybody wants to look at it. It's been a fantastic fund for us. It's a blended fund, so it can be anywhere from 50 to 70% equity and the rest in bonds. It usually sticks around 60% equity and 40% bond. Because there was so much volatility in March, I just wanted to mention how we came through that. We hit a year-to-date high of $77 a share, and then it obviously dropped a lot on the low on March 23rd, happening to be my birthday, to $57 a share. But it's rebounded nicely. It closed on the 4th at $72.12. We are looking right now, our overall exposure stock equity is about 50-50. We are looking at maybe becoming a little more conservative on that and shifting a little more heavily to bonds. But so far, I was very pleased with how the investments, they did go down during the spike down, but the way that they've rebounded, we're back on pretty sound footing in terms of our assets inside of special purposes. That's it.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Really appreciate your report and the work that you and your committee are doing. The next item on the agenda, Ned, I think is my report. I want to say at the outset that of many of the things that our senior minister mentioned is she looked back over this past year, and as we move forward, are very similar to the things that I looked back over this last year and as we're moving forward. So you'll see some overlaps, but that's a good thing. It means that at least we're on the same path together. But this year, our beloved church, our congregation members, friends, ministers, and staff have been presented with serious and significant challenges. And in each one of these situations, my sense, and I think the board agrees with this, that we have come through this with a commitment to the values we hold dear and demonstrated the creative energy necessary to advance the vision of this church and its mission, seeking the Spirit, building community, and changing the world. We had envisioned this spring a period of reflection and reconnection, an opportunity for us to examine what the next steps of our church will be as we go forward. And instead, we were confronted with the realities of a global pandemic, which shuttered our physical doors and spurred us to learn how to reflect and how to connect in many different ways. Currently, as we confront this international pandemic, we're building an even stronger community and advancing the mission of our church in remarkable ways. But the board and our ministers together decided that this was not a time to begin a search for a new minister or an interim, because we do need time to evaluate our church needs, time to see where our growth and change will occur, and just the reality of the uncertainty of what is facing us. This is not the time to be making that decision. It's a time for us to work together and build toward that day. We are deeply grateful that over these last few months, Reverend Emily Manville-Lade has agreed to increase her hours from part-time to full-time. And as Marianne mentioned briefly in her remarks, we have a very special announcement to make. I'm pleased to inform you that Reverend Macklin has been working with Reverend Lade and with the board to develop a new and expanded ministerial position that will officially begin on July 1st, 2020, as Reverend Lade takes up the position as our Minister of Religious Education and Congregational Life. This is a new beginning for her and for us, and watch for more details about this position as we work together and to see the many, many ways that she will continue to bring the ministry and the teaching and the learning and the congregational life that she has provided in so many ways, but now with the opportunity to expand into new areas where her help will be tremendously important for us. In the interim, of course, in these last few weeks and months, Reverend Macklin assembled an absolutely robust ministerial team of people who know our congregation and have deep commitments with our members of our congregation. As she has mentioned, Reverend Barbara Carlson, Reverend Barbara Childs, and Reverend Bill Breeden are now providing pastoral care work for us. They're working with our small group ministry, and they're assisting in the social justice task forces. And a great, great thanks to all of them, all three of them, for the work they're doing in this time. In keeping with our values and with the full approval of the board, our senior minister asked that all of our full-time and part-time staff continue to work to do their work in the safety of their homes, and promised that the church, with full support from this board, will continue to provide them during this time with full pay and full benefits. This is a tremendously important part. It's a tremendous way for us to demonstrate the values that we care about in taking care of those who care for us. And I'm just tremendously grateful for Reverend Macklin's leadership on this issue and the board's continuing support of that leadership. And the results have been amazing. Outstanding quality and variety of sermons from the pulpit, creative and beautiful musical offerings, and with the technological wizardry of our tech team, they've brought the faces and the voices of our congregation into our services every Sunday, and that is bringing us together in so many different ways than we had never before imagined. And the results have been obvious. Increasing numbers of people are streaming each Sunday. Our online collection plate is working. Heartfelt comments and thumbs up emojis during the services. It's been a delight and just an absolutely thrilling opportunity to see how the church and our staff and our ministry have responded to the challenges that we face. I do want to mention one very special piece of work that you may not know, and that is that under Reverend Macklin's leadership, the staff have been reaching out to congregational members individually who have special needs either due to their age or to their isolation, and are more valuable, more vulnerable than others. And this one-on-one ministry is just so important in times like this, when family and friends are not always there to help them. And we are continuing to keep in touch with each one of them through these difficult times. As the Ferris wheel of the miracle happenings, uncertainties, I'm also pleased to let you know that Anne Leduc, our connections coordinator and virtual Zoom master, has welcomed 2 new groups of members to our church this spring alone. So in addition to our current members and friends attending and participating, we're still growing during this time as a church and as a community. We may not know what tomorrow will bring, but we do know that this congregation is strong, resilient, and a powerful force that is leading us forward as we seek the Spirit, build community, and changing the world. In closing this board report, a few notes of appreciation, I believe, are in order. First, to Reverend Macklin, Reverend Late, and each member of our staff. Their leadership has brought us through this and these difficult times, and their creativity and love continues to lead us forward. To Sharon Wiseman, who needed to step aside this spring from the board, I thank you for your wisdom and guidance this past year. And to Drew Schroeder, our amazing thanks for accepting the board's appointment to serve out the rest of Sharon's term. He's been a tremendous help in this virtual meeting today. And of course, and truly, to Abby Gitlitz, Stephen Gilbert, Rich Slaybach, Julie Lawson, and Jane McLeod, my amazing colleagues on this board. They're simply the best. It's now my pleasure to request that Ray Slaybach provide us with the treasurer's report.
Hi, hopefully you can hear me okay. Can you hear me okay?
I want to speak up just a little louder, Rich.
Okay, hang on just a second. Is that better? Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to start the treasurer's report with how we were doing in the current fiscal year. Could we see the next slide, please? The first slide shows the current year trend of income compared to our most recent 3-year seasonal average. Preliminary figures through the end of May, with 1 more month left in the current fiscal year, show that we are experiencing a drop of seasonally adjusted revenue of about 8%. That translates to about $59,000 of our $744,000 budgeted amount. Next slide. Thank you. Fortunately, our expenses are also down by almost the same amount. This slide shows the end of May expenses compared to that same seasonal average, a 7.3% decrease in expenses, about $54,000 of what we budgeted. Next slide. Thank you. This is a trend for this year's seasonally adjusted income by quarter. It's been a fairly steady decline. The next slide. This shows the trend for this year's seasonally adjusted expenses. Notice that the third quarter's expense total, while substantially below average, is showing a slight uptick from previous quarters. Because of these trends, we've applied for and been awarded an SBA Paycheck Protection Program loan under the COVID-19 legislation to cover 2.5 months of wages and salaries. That will ensure that all our employees, from the ministers to the child care workers, will not see a reduction in salary for the time being if these trends continue. Next slide. Even in normal times, putting together a budget for a new fiscal year is an artful application of educated guesses. This year's attempt is a blend of hope and realism, some relatively sure estimates along with some highly speculative guesses. The budget reflects a reduction in anticipated revenue from last year's budget, primarily due to an anticipated decrease in facilities use fees while the building remains closed. Total revenue is targeted at $729,000. That may be high, but we prefer to view it as highly hopeful. We think we have reason for that hope. The congregation can do some incredible things. We just heard from the one of our committees, the auction committee, that just last month we surpassed our talent auction goal of $12,000 by an additional $1,000, and that was during the height of the COVID crisis. Very impressive. Next slide. The proposed budget reflects a reduction in expenses from last year's budget by about $13,000. The reduction in committees and programs from last year is a reflection of no reductions in coffee hour expenses and revenue and review of money not spent by committees last year. We allocated the line there that says previous associate minister, we allocated most of that money that we would have paid for an associate minister toward having more pulpit guests, contracting for some part-time ministerial services, and Reverend Late's move to full-time. We also anticipate additional costs and expenses this fiscal year as we review our ministerial structure with the help of a consultant and implementing what we can from that review. The largest reduction in plant expenses from last year reflects the end of mortgage payments in March of 2021. Finally, this budget projects revenue over expenses of about $1,263. Due to the unusual state of the economy as a result of the pandemic, we will be closely monitoring our revenue and expenses and conduct an extensive review of this budget prior to our December congregational meeting. At December's meeting, we'll provide a new budget for the remainder of the fiscal year for your approval. This time, I believe we will entertain a motion to approve the budget.
Motion to approve the budget? Do we hear?
So motioned.
And a second?
I second. Julie seconds.
You will now see a pop-up show up on your screen to approve the 2021 budget. And again, I will report back the results of that in a moment. Rich, are there?
We should go ahead and go live then with Facebook and Instagram starting tomorrow, period.
Rich, are there any further comments that you want to make on the report? Or are you done?
No, that concludes my report. Thank you, Stuart.
Great, perfect. It's now, we're going to turn to the next item on the agenda, which is the vote for the 25th Sunday plate recipients. And I don't know, do you have a slide on this? Okay, perfect. So for this one, as Abby mentioned at the very beginning, we aren't going to be able to tell you the results right away. So we want to go ahead and take this vote, and then we will spend more time than we have at this moment in the opening in the virtual meeting to actually tally those results. And Abby, are you able to hear this? And can you, any further instructions on this?
No, I'm just going to ask Drew to chime in and let us know how long is this link going to be live for?
So this we're going to make this link live for 30 minutes following the meeting. So in addition to the tiny URL you see here, there's also a link in the chat. And we do want to make sure that anyone attending this meeting does have the opportunity to vote. So all of you momentarily should also be receiving an email just in case it's tricky for you to navigate being in this meeting and voting for the 25% plate offering. So for 30 minutes following the close of the meeting, we'll leave that open to give everyone who is able to attend the meeting ample opportunity to do that. So just as a quick note, we won't be sharing the results of the 25% plate offering until later this next week because we'll be tabulating those offline.
We will also be sending this link to everyone in an email. So if you're uncomfortable typing it in now, you will get this as an email momentarily.
Great, thank you very much. You should see a pop-up showing up on your screen for you to vote.
Actually, they won't see a pop-up on their screen to vote for this. To vote for the 25% plate offering, you'll need to go to the tiny URL listed there. So you'd have to type in tinyurl.com/UUCB25. You can also click on the link in the chat, and momentarily you'll see that come through in an email. We're sending an email to everyone who is in the meeting right now, and that'll take just a few minutes for us to get that to you. But you'll actually have to go to a little form to go ahead and vote there. If there's more than one person at your device, each of you can go through that link and vote.
Great, thank you very much, Drew and Abby. I appreciate that. The last item on our agenda.
Wait, I'm interrupting for 1 second. I've got the people who are writing me things as the voice of the chatters. Some people have asked if we can go over who the recipients are. That was covered in church today. It was also in the prologue, and it is also, they are listed on that, each name is listed on that poll. So we're not going to go over that now.
Anything else, Abby?
I think that's all I've got. Let me very quickly check if there are any other questions. One person asked, will it be possible to continue the grocery cards in some way? And I believe that is something that we will cover in the prologue rather than in this meeting today. So we'll ask for that to be covered in the prologue. We also have a question, and this is going to be for David Keppel, or for Andrew Apple, which is how much of the SPF is fossil free? So Andrew, if you're still on and would like to answer that, feel free to unmute yourself for that.
Fine. I don't have 20Q3 printed right now. As of 20Q2, fossil fuel divested investments were just under $42,000. So that would be in the ballpark of everything. If you're looking at all investments, including operating funds and SPF funds, $42,000 would be in the ballpark of 7%. I could, of all the SPF funds, all special purposes, 445B, just under 10% of all SPF funds.
Thank you for that. I also have a response for the grocery cards. Carol Marks does have grocery cards, so you can send her an email and she can mail you one. So if you're interested, the church definitely does still have them. And I think that is all I have for questions. So I believe we are at closing words. So if our ministers are there.
There they are.
We're very still. Again, we want to thank everyone for attending today, and again, a real special thank you to our board and everyone who made this virtual time together possible. They had several run-throughs and did a lot of work this week, as you might expect. And thanks to one and all for making this happen. And buy grocery cards. Okay. And now, today during the worship service, we brought forward the voice of Howard Thurman, an amazing African theologian known to all seminarians as you go through, and his words continue to inspire and inspire. In the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of the holy, my heart whispers,
Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in good times or tempests, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. It's been wonderful to be together.
Thank you both very much. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
And before we do that, I just want to make sure, sorry,
Okay.
that all of the votes, except for the 25% one, which have not been tallied yet, all of the votes we have taken so far in the meeting have passed. Just make sure we get that on the record. I would like to motion to adjourn. I so motioned.
Yes. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Do we get, oh, here it is. Your opportunity to vote on adjournment. Thank you all very, very much.
Well, while we're voting to adjourn, I would just note the email that has the link to the 25% plate hasn't gone out just yet. It's taking me just a little longer to get all the emails compiled. So that will be coming out momentarily. So if you weren't able to open the link during the meeting, don't worry, you haven't missed the follow-up email yet. It'll be just a couple more minutes. So thanks for your patience.
Thanks, Drew. All the best to all of you and to our church.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. You guys are awesome. The team
Thank
that put it
you.
together, well done.
Yes.
We need to blow out the candle.
Woohoo!
Way to go.
Okay, we're unmuted.
We need to blow out the candle.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
A cacophony of goodbyes. Have a good one.
You guys did a great job.
Thank you. Beautifully done. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Excellent. Excellent. Except I don't know that it's.
Thanks,
Oh,
Ned.
sorry. Yeah, there.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Judy,
you
I'll
all.
blow out the colors. Thank you. It was a great meeting.
Yes, it was.
Thanks, everyone.
Now I gotta figure out who Put your cursor at the bottom of the black box. All the way down to the bottom. Here. Now when I close those things. Well, I think you just put it down in here on the right-hand side. You just moved it over to the little